The winter of 1883 came to Montana like a wolf to wounded prey, silent,
We need to get
merciless,
out of here.
hungry for anything
I'm
warm and
scared.
living
I
that
know.
dared
Stay
stand
close
against
to
it.
me.
Okay.
Cole Harrison had seen death before. He had seen it in the churned mud of Shiloh, where boys barely old enough to shave fell screaming into ditches
You know what
that
I'm
ran
after.
red with more
Where
blood
is
than
it?
rain.
I might.
He had
What's it
seen
worth
it on
to
the
you?
cattle
Please, we
trails,
don't
where
have
a
much
single
time.
moment of carelessness could leave a man trampled into nothing more than a stain on the prairie grass. And he had seen it in his own bedroom 3 winters past, watching Catherine fade like morning mist, her once bright eyes growing dim as consumption hollowed her out from the inside. But when he found the woman in the abandoned horse barn on that bitter December morning, something shifted in the frozen wasteland he had built around his heart. It was Thunder who sensed her first. The massive black gelding had carried Cole through a war and across half a continent, and the horse knew things before men did. Thunder's ears pricked forward, his nostrils flaring, as they approached the old livery stable at the edge of Cole's property. The building had been abandoned for years, ever since lightning had split the roof, and the previous owner had simply walked away rather than fix it. Cole dismounted, his boots crunching in snow that came up past his ankles. The temperature had dropped to 15 below zero during the night, cold enough to freeze a man's breath before it left his lungs. He could see his own exhalations hanging in the air like small ghosts. The barn door hung crooked on broken hinges. Cole pushed it open slowly, his right hand moving instinctively to the Colt revolver at his hip. In Montana territory, you learn to be cautious. The land was still wild enough that anything could be waiting in the darkness. What he found was worse than any bandit or wounded animal. She was curled in the corner beneath a moth-eaten horse blanket, so still that at first Cole thought he was looking at a corpse. Her lips had gone the color of old bruises, dark purple against skin so pale it seemed translucent. Ice crystals clung to strands of dark hair that had escaped from beneath the blanket. One thin hand lay exposed, the fingers curled inward like the petals of a dying flower. Cole had told himself after Catherine died that he would never let himself feel that particular terror again. The terror of watching someone slip away. The helplessness of knowing that all his size and strength meant nothing against death when it came calling. But his feet were moving before his mind could stop them. He crossed the barn in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees beside her, his hands roughened by years of ranch work and scarred from that long-ago war, reached for her throat to check for a pulse. Her skin was so cold it burned his fingers. For a moment, nothing. Just the whistle of wind through the broken roof and the pounding of his own heart. Then he felt it, faint as a butterfly wing. A pulse. She was alive. Cole did not hesitate. He stripped off his heavy sheepskin coat and wrapped it around her, then lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, light as a child, and that frightened him more than anything. He had held Catherine at the end, felt how the sickness had eaten away at her until there was nothing left but bird bones and will. This woman had that same terrible lightness. Thunder stood waiting, patient as always. Cole managed to swing up into the saddle with the woman cradled against his chest. He could feel her shallow breathing against his collarbone. "Go," he said, and Thunder needed no more encouragement. The gelding flew across the snow-covered ground, powerful muscles bunching and releasing as they raced toward the ranch house. Cole held the woman tight, trying to will his own body heat into her frozen form. He found himself talking to her, though she showed no sign of hearing. "Stay with me," he said, his voice rough from disuse. He had not spoken more than a handful of words to anyone but his daughters in months. "Just stay with me. You're going to be all right. You hear me? You're going to be all right." He did not know why he cared, did not know why this stranger's life suddenly mattered more than the careful numbness he had cultivated since Catherine's death. But something about finding her in that barn, about the stubborn thread of life still pulsing in her throat, had cracked something open inside him. Maybe it was because Catherine had made him promise. In those final days when the blood had started coming up with every cough, she had gripped his hand with what little strength remained and made him swear. "Don't become a stone," she had whispered, her voice like wind through dry grass. "Don't let your heart die with me. Cole, promise me. Promise you'll keep living." He had promised, and then he had broken that promise every day for 3 years, until now. The ranch house appeared through the swirling snow. Cole shouted for help before he even dismounted. The front door flew open, and Mrs. Patterson, the widow who helped with the girls, came running out, her face going pale when she saw the bundle in Cole's arms. "Sweet Mary and Joseph," she breathed. Who is that? Don't know, Cole said, already moving past her toward the house. Get Doc McAllister. Now. He carried the woman into the front parlor and laid her on the sofa near the fireplace. Her head lolled to one side, exposing the long line of her throat. She was young, he realized, younger than Catherine had been, maybe close to 30, though it was hard to tell beneath the grime and exhaustion. Cole built up the fire until it roared, then knelt beside her and began chafing her hands, trying to restore circulation. Her fingers were like ice in his palms. He worked methodically the way he had learned in the war when frostbitten soldiers needed warming before the surgeons took their limbs. Doc McAllister arrived within the hour, his black bag clutched in one gnarled hand. He was pushing 70 but still sharp as a razor, and he took one look at the woman before shaking his head. How long was she out there? He asked, already pulling out his stethoscope. Don't know. I found her in the old barn this morning. The doctor listened to her heart and lungs, checked her pupils, ran his hands over her limbs, looking for frostbite. Finally, he sat back with a heavy sigh. She's lucky you found her when you did, he said. Another night out there, and we would be measuring her for a coffin. As it is, she'll live. But it was close, Cole. Damn close. Cole felt something unknot in his chest. What does she need? Warmth. Food when she wakes, rest. The doctor looked at him with shrewd eyes. And probably a reason to stay alive. Woman doesn't end up freezing to death in a barn by accident. Before Cole could respond, the woman's eyelids fluttered. Both men leaned forward as her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises the color of rich earth after rain. Deep brown flecked with gold. For a long moment, she just stared up at them, her gaze unfocused. Then awareness crept in, and with it, terror. She tried to sit up, gasping. No, no, please don't send me back. Please. Easy now. Cole's voice came out gentler than he intended. Nobody's sending you anywhere. You're safe. Safe? The word came out like a bitter laugh. She looked around wildly, taking in the comfortable parlor, the warm fire, the two men watching her. Where am I? My ranch, few miles outside Timber Ridge. Cole studied her face. What's your name? She hesitated, and he could see the calculation behind her eyes, wondering how much to tell, how much to trust. Sarah, she finally whispered. Sarah Bennett. Well, Miss Bennett, I'm Cole Harrison. This is Doc McAllister. You gave us quite a scare. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely audible. I didn't mean to trespass. I'll go. I'll leave right now. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled immediately. Cole caught her before she felt his large hand steady on her arms. You're not going anywhere, he said firmly. Well, in your condition. Not in this cold, though. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked away as if ashamed to let him see them. You don't understand. I can't pay you. I don't have any money. I don't have anything. Did I ask you for money? No, but I... She trailed off, seeming to realize that she had no argument, no defense. She was at his mercy, and they both knew it. Doc McAllister cleared his throat. I'll leave you two to talk. Cole makes sure she eats something when she's ready. Soup would be best. Nothing too heavy. He picked up his bag and headed for the door, then paused. And Miss Bennett, you're in good hands. Cole Harrison might look like a grizzly bear, but he's got a decent heart under all that scowl. After the doctor left, an awkward silence filled the room. Sarah sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands twisted together in her lap. Cole stood by the fire, not quite sure what to do with himself. He had not been alone with a woman who was not his daughter or a neighbor in 3 years. How did you end up in that barn? He finally asked. Sarah's jaw tightened. It's a long story. I've got time. She looked up at him, and he saw something fierce flash in those brown eyes. Pride, maybe, or anger. Why do you care? It was a fair question. Cole thought about Catherine again, about the promise he had made and broken. Because I know what it's like to be desperate, he said quietly. I know what it's like to want to give up. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she took a shaky breath and started talking. I came here to get married, she said. I'm a mail-order bride, or I was supposed to be. The story came out in pieces, halting and rough. Sarah told him about Philadelphia, about her father who had died in a shipping accident, leaving her with nothing. About her Uncle Silas, who had taken her in, but treated her like an indentured servant. Worse than that, if the bruises in her voice were any indication. He was going to... She stopped, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. I had to leave. I saw an advertisement in the newspaper. Thomas Bennett looking for a wife. He said he was a successful merchant in Montana. He sent letters, made promises. Cole felt his hands curling into fists, though he kept his voice level. Let me guess. When you got here, Thomas Bennett wasn't waiting. He got married to someone else a month ago. The bitterness in her voice could have stripped its friend. Caroline Whitmore, the banker's daughter. I suppose a wealthy local girl was more appealing than a penniless bride from back east. So he just left you stranded. The station master told me Mr. Bennett had moved to Helena 2 weeks ago, started a new store there with his wife's money. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. I traveled 2,000 miles, sold everything I owned for the train ticket, and I arrived to find that the man I was supposed to marry was already gone. Cole thought about what Doc McAllister had said. A woman does not end up freezing to death in a barn by accident. How long have you been sleeping rough? 3 nights. Sarah's voice had gone very small. The first night I tried to stay at the boarding house, but they wanted payment up front. I had maybe $2 left after the train ticket. The second night I found an alcove behind the general store. Last night I couldn't move anymore. I crawled into that barn knowing I wouldn't leave it alive. She looked up at him, and the raw pain in her eyes made Cole's chest ache. I was going to die in that barn, she said. I had accepted it. And then you found me. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Cole studied the woman before him, Sarah Bennett. She was thin, almost gaunt, but he could see the steel underneath. She had survived an abusive household, traveled across the country on nothing but hope, and when that hope had died, she had kept fighting until the cold finally took her strength. That was not weakness. That was strength. Catherine's voice echoed in his memory. Don't become a stone. Keep living. Can you cook? Cole heard himself ask. Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Yes, I can cook clean, so I kept house for my uncle for 4 years. My housekeeper died last spring. Mrs. Chen. Good woman. Heart gave out. Cole crossed his arms, aware of how he must look. 6.5 feet of scarred cowboy face like weathered granite. I've been managing on my own, but I've got 2 daughters who need more than I can give them. If you want work, I can offer you a position. A position? Hope flickered across her face, fragile as candle flame. Housekeeper. Cook. Help with the girls when I'm out working the ranch. He named a wage that made her eyes widen. It was more than generous, and they both knew it. Room and board included. There's a small bedroom off the kitchen. Used to be Mrs. Chen's. It's yours if you want it. Sarah stared at him. Why would you do this for me? You don't know me. No, contradicted him, but I know desperation when I see it. And I know that everybody deserves a second chance. Even me, he thought, but did not say. I'll work hard, Sarah said, her voice suddenly fierce. I promise you won't regret this. I'll earn my keep. I'll prove that I'm worth it. See that you do. But Cole's tone was not harsh. If anything, it was almost gentle. Before either of them could say more, the front door burst open and 2 small tornadoes came flying into the house, all golden braids and bright voices. Papa, Papa, Mrs. Patterson said you brought someone home, and she's very sick, and we should be quiet. But we wanted to see if she was all right, and oh. The twin girls skidded to a stop in the parlor doorway, their identical faces lighting up with curiosity as they spotted Sarah on the sofa. Cole felt his expression soften despite himself. Girls, what did Mrs. Patterson say about running in the house? Sorry, Papa, they chorused, not sounding sorry at all. He gestured them forward. This is Miss Sarah Bennett. She's going to be working here helping around the house. Sarah, these are my daughters, Ruby and Pearl. The girls were 7 years old, identical in every way except for the small beauty marks that distinguished them. Ruby had a tiny mole on her left cheek while Pearl's was on her neck. They had Catherine's golden hair and green eyes, and looking at them always made Cole's heart ache with love and loss in equal measure. Hello, Miss Sarah, Ruby said, the bolder of the two. She stepped forward and studied Sarah with the frank curiosity of childhood. You're very pretty. Were you really sick? Ruby, that's not polite, Pearl whispered, but she was staring at Sarah with equal interest. Sarah's face transformed when she smiled at the girls. Some of the hardness melted away, revealing the woman underneath the survivor's armor. Hello, Ruby. Hello, Pearl. Yes, I was sick, but your father helped me. He saved my life. Papa's good at saving things, Ruby announced proudly. He saved a baby bird once when it fell out of its nest, and he fixed Mrs. Patterson's roof when it was leaking. And he gave Mr. Chen firewood all winter when Mr. Chen didn't have money to buy any, Pearl added. Cole felt his ears growing warm. That's enough, girls. Miss Bennett needs to rest. But Sarah was looking at him with new eyes, and he shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. Come on, he said gruffly. I'll show you to your room. The bedroom off the kitchen was small but clean. It had a narrow bed, a dresser, a chair, and a pot-bellied stove that Cole immediately set about lighting. Sarah stood in the doorway, taking it all in, with an expression he could not quite read. It's perfect, she finally said. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Cole, he corrected. Just Cole. Cole. She tested the name, and something about hearing it in her voice made his pulse quicken in a way he had not felt in years. And I'm Sarah, not Miss Bennett, just Sarah. They stood there for a moment, and the air between them felt suddenly charged with something Cole did not want to examine too closely. Get some rest, he said, breaking the spell. We'll talk more in the morning about your duties. But as he turned to leave, Sarah's voice stopped him. Cole, why did you really help me? He looked back at her, this woman who had come so close to dying, who had been betrayed and abandoned and left with nothing. Because someone I loved once made me promise not to let my heart turn to stone, he said. And I've been breaking that promise for 3 years. Maybe it's time I started keeping it. That night, Cole sat in his study with a glass of whiskey he did not drink. The amber liquid caught the firelight, casting warm shadows across the walls. On his desk sat a photograph of Catherine taken on their wedding day. She was smiling, her head tilted slightly to one side, the way she always did when she was happy. I found someone today, he said to the photograph. It had become a habit, these one-sided conversations. A woman. She was dying in the old barn. I brought her home. The photograph did not answer, of course, but Cole could almost hear Catherine's voice in his head. Good, she would say. You did good, my love. I gave her a job. Housekeeper. I don't know why. She's a stranger. Could be anyone. Because you have a good heart, Catherine's voice whispered. Because you remember what it is to suffer. Cole took a sip of the whiskey, letting it burn down his throat. The girls like her already. You know how they are. Instant attachment to anything wounded or lost. They get that from you. I'm not sure I did the right thing, Kat. What if she's trouble? What if I'm letting someone dangerous into our home? You'll protect them. You always protect what's yours. She has sad eyes, Cole said quietly, like mine. Like they've seen too much and can't unsee it. Then maybe you can help each other. He sat there for a long time, holding the glass, looking at Catherine's frozen smile. Finally, he raised the whiskey in a silent toast. I loved you, he said. I still love you. But maybe it's time I started living again. Maybe it's time I kept my promise. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. And somewhere in the house, Sarah Bennett lay sleeping in a real bed for the first time in a week, warm and safe and alive. Neither of them knew that 5 miles away in the saloon that served as Timber Ridge's beating heart of vice and violence, a man would soon hear about the mail-order bride who had been taken in by Cole Harrison. And neither of them knew that this man was already planning how to use her. But that would come later. For now, there was just the quiet house, the sleeping girls, and 2 broken people who had somehow found each other in the Montana winter. The next morning came cold and clear. Sarah woke to unfamiliar warmth and softness, and for a moment she did not remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The barn, Cole Harrison, the offer of work. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. What time was it? She had meant to wake early to prove her worth immediately. If she was going to work for her keep, she needed to show that she could earn it. The small window in her room showed only the barest hint of dawn light. Sarah dressed quickly in the same worn clothes she had been wearing when Cole found her. They were clean, at least. Someone had washed them while she slept. She made her way to the kitchen and stood for a moment taking stock. It was a good-sized room well equipped. A cast-iron stove dominated one wall with copper pots hanging above it. There was a large table that could seat six, a pantry, and a window that looked out over the ranch yard. Sarah set to work. She found flour, eggs, bacon, coffee. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, building up the fire in the stove, mixing batter for biscuits, setting the coffee to brew. The familiar rhythm of cooking soothed her. This was something she knew how to do. This was solid ground. By the time Cole came downstairs, the kitchen was filled with good smells and morning light. He stopped in the doorway, clearly surprised to find breakfast already laid out on the table. "You didn't have to do this," he said. Sarah turned from the stove, a plate of biscuits in her hands. "I wanted to. I need to start earning my keep." Cole studied her for a moment. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly than she had the day before. He was even larger than she remembered, his tall frame filling the doorway. His hair was dark with threads of silver at the temples, and his face was all hard angles and weathered skin. Not handsome in any conventional sense, but striking in the way of mountains or storms. Powerful, unmistakable. And his eyes were the most startling shade of green she had ever seen. Forest green, deep and alive. "You already earned your keep by surviving," Cole said. "But I appreciate this. It smells good." When they ate in companionable silence, Sarah noticed that he cleaned his plate, sopping up the last of the gravy with a biscuit. It was not much, but it pleased her. Her uncle had never appreciated anything she did. Every meal had been an opportunity for criticism, every task a chance to point out her failures. "The girls will be up soon," Cole said, pouring himself more coffee. "They'll want breakfast. Fair warning, they eat like field hands. I'll make sure there's plenty." As if summoned by the mention of food, Ruby and Pearl came tumbling down the stairs, still in their nightgowns, golden hair, sleep mussed, and beautiful. "Morning, Papa," they called in unison, then spotted Sarah and their faces lit up. "Miss Sarah, you're still here." "Of course I'm still here," Sarah said, smiling despite herself. "I live here now. I work for your father." The girls climbed into chairs at the table, and Sarah served them plates piled high with scrambled eggs, bacon, and biscuits. They attacked the food with enthusiasm, chattering between bites about their plans for the day. Cole watched his daughters with an expression of such tender fondness that it made Sarah's chest ache. Whatever else this man might be, he loved his children with his whole heart. After breakfast, Cole excused himself to go check on the livestock. The girls helped Sarah clear the table, their small hands carefully carrying plates to the sink. "Miss Sarah," Ruby said as they washed dishes, "do you have a mama and papa?" Sarah's hands stilled in the soapy water. "No, sweetheart. They passed away some years ago." "That's sad," Pearl said softly. "Our mama died too. 3 years ago." "I know, your father told me. I'm very sorry." "Do you miss your mama?" Ruby asked with the directness of childhood. "Every day," Sarah said honestly. "But it gets easier with time. The missing never goes away, but it gets easier to bear." The girls nodded solemnly as if she had confirmed something they already knew. "Papa says Mama is in heaven," Pearl said. "She's watching over us, and she's not sick anymore." "I'm sure that's true," Sarah said gently, "and I'm sure she's very proud of both of you." She spent the rest of the morning cleaning. The house was not filthy exactly, but it had the unmistakable air of a place maintained by someone who did not quite know how. Dust had gathered in corners, curtains needed washing, floors needed a good scrubbing. Sarah worked methodically, room by room. The physical labor felt good after so many days of cold and fear and helplessness. This was something she could control. This was something she could fix. Around noon, she made sandwiches and called the girls in from playing in the snow. They ate together at the kitchen table, and Sarah found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it, the easy chatter of children, the simple domesticity of a shared meal. It was peaceful, safe. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. That afternoon, Cole came in from the barn and found her mending a pair of his work shirts. She had set up by the window in the parlor, taking advantage of the natural light. "You don't have to do that," he said. Sarah looked up from her stitching. The elbows were worn through. It needed doing. He crossed the room and stood looking down at her work. His nearness made her aware of how large he was, how his presence seemed to fill the space around him. "You're good at that," he observed. "I've had practice." She tied off a thread and reached for the scissors. "My uncle was very particular about his clothes." Everything had to be perfect. Something in her tone made Cole's eyes sharpen. He sounds like a hard man. He was. Sarah kept her gaze on her sewing. But that's in the past now. I don't have to think about him anymore. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm willing to listen." Sarah looked up at him, surprised. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." He nodded once, then turned to leave, but he paused in the doorway. "Sarah, you did good today. The house, the cooking, all of it. Thank you." After he was gone, Sarah sat for a long time with the mended shirt in her lap, feeling something warm and fragile unfurling in her chest. Hope, she realized. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she felt genuine hope. The following day was Sunday, and Cole asked if Sarah wanted to accompany them to church in town. She hesitated, knowing what it would mean. Showing her face in Timber Ridge, facing the people who knew she had been abandoned. But Cole seemed to sense her reluctance. "You don't have to," he said, "but I won't have you hiding away like you've done something shameful. You're part of this household now. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." So Sarah found herself sitting in the Harrison wagon as it rolled into Timber Ridge, squeezed between the chattering twins. Cole drove, his large frame relaxed, one hand holding the reins with easy competence. Timber Ridge was small, just a single main street with buildings clustered along it like children seeking shelter. There was a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, a church with a white steeple, and a few other establishments. Perhaps 200 people called this place home. Every eye turned toward them as they pulled up to the church. Sarah felt the weight of those stairs, heard the whispers start. "That's her, the mail-order bride Thomas Bennett left behind. Shameful, really. What kind of woman gets herself stranded like that?" Cole must have lost his mind taking her in. Sarah kept her chin up and her eyes forward, but her hands trembled as she smoothed her skirt. She had borrowed a dress from the trunk of clothes Cole had mentioned belonged to his late wife. It fit reasonably well, though Catherine Harrison had clearly been a larger woman. Cole helped her down from the wagon, his hand steady and warm on her elbow. The girls bounded ahead, calling greetings to their friends, but Cole stayed close to Sarah as they walked toward the church. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "Small-town gossip. Nothing more." Inside the church, they found a pew near the middle. Sarah was acutely aware of people staring, of the whispered conversations that stopped when she turned her head. But she focused on the service, on the familiar words of the hymns, on the sound of the twins singing in their clear, sweet voices. After the service, several people approached. Most were merely curious, offering polite but distant greetings. But one woman pushed through the small crowd with the determination of a general marshaling troops. Mrs. Agnes Patterson was perhaps 55, with iron-gray hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She was the town's unofficial arbiter of social standing, and her opinion could make or break a reputation. "Cole Harrison," she said crisply, "I heard you had taken in a new housekeeper." "News travels fast," Cole replied, his tone neutral. Mrs. Patterson's gaze swung to Sarah, assessing her from head to toe in one sweeping glance. "You must be the mail-order bride. Sarah Bennett, is it?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah said, meeting the older woman's eyes steadily. "Terrible business what Thomas Bennett did. Absolutely shameful." Mrs. Patterson's lips pursed. Of course, one does wonder what kind of woman answers such advertisements in the first place. Sarah felt her face heat, but before she could respond, Cole stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. The kind of woman who's brave enough to start over. The kind who survives when life tries to break her. "Sarah is my employee, Mrs. Patterson, and I expect her to be treated with respect." The older woman's eyebrows rose, but she had the grace to look slightly abashed. "Of course, Cole. I meant no offense." "See that you don't." They left the church shortly after, Cole's hand firm on Sarah's back as he guided her through the crowd. The twins skipped ahead, oblivious to the tension, but as they reached the wagon, a man stepped out from the shadow of the general store. Sarah felt Cole go rigid beside her. The man was tall, perhaps 6'2", and dressed far too well for a frontier town. His suit was Easter-made expensive, and his dark hair was slicked back with pomade. He was handsome in a calculated way, with features that were just a bit too perfect to be trustworthy. "Cole Harrison," the man said, his voice smooth as oil. It's been a long time. Not long enough, Stone, Cole replied, his tone flat and hard. Jacob Stone, Sarah had heard the name whispered in town. The man who owned the saloon, and if rumors were true, half the businesses in Timber Ridge through loans and intimidation. Stone's gaze slid to Sarah, and something predatory flickered in his eyes. And who is this lovely creature? Surely not the mail-order bride I've been hearing about. None of your business, Cole said. Come now, old friend. Is that any way to greet a fellow veteran? Stone smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I was merely going to offer the young lady employment if she finds herself in need. My saloon is always looking for pretty girls to serve drinks. Sarah felt Cole's hand tighten on her arm. She has employment. Does she now? Stone's smile widened. How generous of you, Harrison. Taking in strays again. You always did have a soft heart under all that muscle. Girls get in the wagon, Cole said without taking his eyes off Stone. Ruby and Pearl scrambled to obey, sensing the danger in their father's tone. Stone raised his hands in mock surrender. No need for dramatics. I was simply making conversation. He tipped his hat to Sarah. If you change your mind about that employment, my door is always open. She won't, Cole said. They drove away, the intense silence. Sarah could feel the anger radiating off Cole like heat from a stove. The girls sat quietly, their earlier chatter subdued. Who was that? Sarah finally asked. Trouble, Cole said curtly. Then after a moment, Jacob Stone and I served together in the war. He was a different man then. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe I just didn't see what he really was. What is he now? Dangerous. Cole looked at her, his green eyes serious. Stay away from him, Sarah. I mean it. Jacob Stone is not a man you want attention from. Sarah nodded, a chill running down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. That night, after the girls were in bed and the house had settled into quiet, Sarah found Cole sitting in his study. The door was open and she could see him at his desk, a glass of whiskey in one hand and a photograph in the other. She knocked softly. I'm sorry to disturb you. Cole looked up and she saw something raw in his face before he shuddered it away. You're not disturbing me. Come in. Sarah stepped into the room. It was clearly his private space filled with books and maps and the accumulated objects of a life well lived. But what drew her attention was the photograph he held. Your wife, she asked gently. Catherine. He handed her the frame. Taken on our wedding day. Sarah studied the image. Catherine Harrison had been beautiful with golden hair and a warm smile. She looked happy. In love. She was lovely, Sarah said, handing the photograph back. She was everything. Cole set it carefully back on the desk. I met her in Boston. I was driving cattle there, barely more than a kid with big dreams and no money. She was the daughter of a doctor. Her family thought I was trash. But she married you anyway. She did. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Stubborn woman. Once she decided something, that was that. We came out here, built this ranch from nothing. Had the twins 2 years later. Best years of my life. What happened? Sarah asked, though she thought she knew. Consumption. Took her slow. Months of watching her waste away, coughing up blood, getting weaker every day. His hands clenched on the arms of his chair. The doctor said if we had stayed in Boston with better medicine, she might have lived. I killed her by bringing her out here. No, Sarah said firmly. The disease killed her, not you. Cole looked up at her, surprise in his eyes. I know what it's like to blame yourself for things beyond your control, Sarah continued. But your wife chose to come here. She chose to build a life with you. Would she have been happier in Boston, married to some doctor, living in comfort, but without you? I don't know, Cole admitted. I think you do. Sarah moved closer. She loved you. That's clear in every word you say about her. And she gave you 2 beautiful daughters and years of happiness. Don't dishonor that by thinking you took something from her. You gave her a life she chose. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're wise for someone so young. I'm not that young, and I've learned hard lessons. Your uncle, Sarah hesitated, then nodded. He was my father's brother. When my parents died, he was the only family I had left. So I went to live with him thinking he would care for me. But he only wanted a servant, someone he could control. Did he hurt you? Cole's voice had gone very quiet, but there was something dangerous underneath. Yes. The word came out barely above a whisper. Not at first. At first, he was just cruel with words, but then it got worse, and when I tried to leave, he locked me in the cellar, said I was ungrateful, said I owed him. How did you get away? One night he came home drunk. He tried to... Sarah stopped, unable to continue. Cole stood, his imposing presence suddenly tense with controlled fury. He tried to force himself on you. I fought him, pushed him down the stairs. He broke his arm. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. I knew he would kill me for it or have me locked away. So I ran. I had maybe $20 I had managed to hide over the years. I saw the advertisement from Thomas Bennett, and it seemed like Providence. A chance to escape. A chance for a new life. And instead, you got betrayed again. Yes, Sarah looked up at him. But then you found me, and for the first time since my parents died, someone has shown me genuine kindness. Not because they wanted something from me, but because they're a good person. Cole's expression softened. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and his hand moved to her cheek. His fingers were gentle despite their size. You're safe here, Sarah, he said. I give you my word. Nobody will hurt you again. Not while I'm breathing. The intensity in his voice made her heart skip. She believed him. This man who had known his own loss, who carried his own pain, understood hers. And in that understanding, something was forming between them. Something fragile and new and terrifying. Thank you, she whispered. They stood there in the lamplight, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Close enough that when he leaned down slightly, she found herself rising on her toes to meet him. But at the last moment, Cole pulled back. You should get some rest, he said, his voice rough. It's late. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she left the study, she could feel his gaze on her back, heavy and warm and full of unspoken things. 3 days later, as word had spread through Timber Ridge about the mail-order bride, who now worked for Cole Harrison, Jacob Stone sat in his saloon office, a glass of imported whiskey before him. Across from him sat a man with a scar running from his left ear to his jaw. Luther Kane, Stone's enforcer, his weapon. Tell me about the woman, Stone said. Luther shrugged. Sarah Bennett, mail-order bride from Philadelphia, Thomas Bennett's latest mark. She showed up expecting a husband and found nothing. And Harrison took her in. Gave her a housekeeper from what I hear. Stone swirled the whiskey in his glass, watching the light catch in the amber liquid. Interesting. Very interesting. You thinking what I'm thinking, boss? A slow smile spread across Stone's face. Cole Harrison has been a thorn in my side for too long. He owns the best ranch land in the territory. Water rights that I need for my own expansion. I've offered to buy him out 3 times, and 3 times he's refused. So we take it from him. Not yet. Stone leaned back in his chair. First, we give him a reason to want to leave. A reason to be too distracted to fight back. The woman... Exactly, Stone's eyes glittered with malice. Harrison's weakness has always been his need to protect people. His wife, his daughters, and now it seems this Sarah Bennett. You want me to scare her off. Eventually, but first, I want you to remind our friend Thomas Bennett that he owes me a favor. A rather large favor, considering I was the one who provided those forged marriage contracts he's been using. Luther's scarred face split into a grin. You want Bennett to cause trouble for the girl? I want Bennett to create a legal problem that will force Harrison to either give up his land or watch his precious housekeeper go to jail for fraud. Either way, I win. And if Harrison fights, Stone's expression hardened, then we make sure he can't. One way or another, Cole Harrison's time in Timber Ridge is coming to an end. And that woman he's so eager to protect, she's going to be the key to his destruction. In the warm safety of the Harrison Ranch, Sarah lay in her small bed, unaware of the danger gathering like storm clouds on the horizon. She was thinking about Cole's gentle touch, about the way his eyes had softened when he looked at her, about the way her heart had raced when he had leaned close. It had been so long since anyone had made her feel anything but fear or pain. This new feeling was dangerous, intoxicating, terrifying. She closed her eyes and let herself imagine just for a moment what it might be like to belong here. Not as an employee, but as something more. To be part of this family. To wake up every morning to the sound of the twins laughing. To see Cole's rare smile and know that she had put it there. It was a foolish dream. She knew that. She was a woman with nothing a mail-order bride who had been discarded. She had no right to dream of anything beyond the safety she had already been given. But in the darkness of her room with the Montana winter pressing cold against the windows, Sarah let herself dream anyway. 2 weeks passed like water finding its course through stone. Slowly, inevitably, reshaping everything it touched. Sarah rose each morning before the sun touched the horizon, her body still carrying the habits of survival. She would build up the fire in the kitchen stove, set coffee to brew, and begin preparing breakfast while the rest of the house still slept. There was comfort in the routine, safety in knowing exactly what needed doing. Cole would come down just as the first light crept through the windows, his boots heavy on the wooden stairs. He never said much in the mornings, just nodded his thanks when she set his plate before him. But she had learned to read the small signs. The way his shoulders relaxed when he took that first sip of coffee, the barely perceptible softening around his eyes when the biscuits came out perfectly golden. The ghost of a smile when Ruby and Pearl tumbled into the kitchen, sleep rumpled and chattering like magpies. The girls had attached themselves to Sarah with the fierce devotion of children who had lost their mother too young. They followed her through the house as she worked, offering to help with whatever task occupied her hands. Pearl liked to fold laundry, her small fingers careful with each piece. Ruby preferred cooking standing on a stool beside Sarah at the stove, learning how to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl. "Miss Sarah," Pearl asked one afternoon as they beat rugs on the porch, "do you think you'll stay with us forever?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She paused, the rug beater held in mid-swing. "I don't know, sweetheart. That depends on a lot of things." "Do you like it here?" Ruby wanted to know. Sarah looked out over the ranch. Snow still covered everything in a thick white blanket, but the sky was that particular shade of blue that only existed in Montana. Endless, crystalline, beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. "Yes," she said honestly, "I like it here very much." "Then you should stay forever," Ruby declared, with the absolute certainty of 7-year-old logic. "Papa likes you too. We can tell." "He's your employer, nothing more," Sarah said, but she could feel heat creeping up her neck. The twins exchanged one of their knowing looks, the kind of silent communication that only twins seemed capable of. "Papa looks at you the way he used to look at Mama," Pearl said softly, "like you're something precious." Before Sarah could respond, the girls had darted off into the snow, leaving her alone with thoughts she did not want to examine too closely. That evening, after the girls had been put to bed and the house had settled into its nighttime quiet, Sarah discovered something that changed everything. She had been putting away linens in the upstairs hallway when she noticed a door slightly ajar. It was a room she had never entered, had assumed was storage, or perhaps a guest room that was kept closed during winter. Curiosity won out over propriety. Sarah pushed the door open. The room had been preserved like a shrine or a tomb. Dresses hung in the wardrobe, their fabrics rich and fine. A hairbrush sat on the vanity, still threaded with golden strands. Books were stacked beside the bed, a ribbon marking a place in one that would never be read. And everywhere the lingering ghost of perfume, roses and vanilla. Catherine's room? Sarah knew she should leave. This was private, sacred. But her feet carried her forward until she stood before a photograph on the dresser. It showed Catherine and Cole on their wedding day, both so young they seemed like different people. Catherine was radiant in white lace, her smile bright enough to light the whole world. And Cole, younger by a decade but already tall and broad-shouldered, looked at his bride with such naked adoration that Sarah felt like an intruder witnessing something too intimate for outside eyes. Beautiful, wasn't she? Sarah spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Cole stood in the doorway, blocking most of the light from the hallway. "I'm sorry," Sarah said quickly. "I didn't mean to pry. The door was open and it's all right." Cole stepped into the room, moving with the care of someone entering a church. "I should have told you about this room. Should have closed it properly." He crossed to the photograph, picking it up with hands that seemed too large for something so delicate. "Catherine was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen," he said quietly. "First time I saw her, she was walking down a Boston street with her father. I was fresh off the cattle drive, covered in dust and probably smelling like a barn. She looked at me like I was a curiosity, not with disgust like her father did, just curious." "How did you meet her properly?" Sarah found herself asking. A smile ghosted across Cole's face. I followed her to the library where she worked part-time. Walked in there with my hat in my hands and asked if she could recommend a book for a cowboy who didn't know much about reading but wanted to learn. Did she? She did. Gave me Ivanhoe. Said if I was going to learn, I might as well learn from the best. His thumb traced over Catherine's face in the photograph. I came back every week for a new book. Took me 3 months to work up the courage to ask her to dinner. Sarah could picture it so clearly. This mountain of a man rough and scarred from war and hard living, made shy by a librarian's daughter. Her family must have been horrified when you courted her. They were. Her father threatened to disown her if she married me. Said I was beneath her. That I would drag her down into poverty and ruin. Cole set the photograph back on the dresser. But Catherine had a stubborn streak. Once she decided something that was the end of it. She said she would rather be poor with me than rich without me. She loved you very much. And I killed her for it. The words came out flat and hard. Brought her out to Montana where the winters are brutal and the nearest doctor is 20 miles away. When she got sick, there was nothing I could do. Nothing but watch her die by inches. Sarah moved closer, drawn by the raw pain in his voice. You didn't kill her, Cole. The disease did. I should have taken her back to Boston when she first got sick. Should have swallowed my pride and begged her father for help. He could have afforded the best doctors, the best treatments. And Catherine would have hated you for it. Sarah spoke with absolute certainty. She chose this life. She chose you. Taking that choice away from her would have been the real betrayal. Cole turned to look at her, his green eyes searching her face. How do you know that? Because I know what it's like to have no choices, to have every decision made for you by someone who thinks they know better. Sarah's voice was steady despite the memories clawing at her throat. Your wife had agency. She had power over her own life. That's rare for a woman. Don't dishonor her memory by thinking she was too weak or foolish to know her own mind. For a long moment, Cole just stared at her. Then slowly something shifted in his expression. The grief was still there, would probably always be there. But underneath it, Sarah saw recognition, understanding. You're not what I expected, he said quietly. What did you expect? Someone broken, someone who needed saving. Cole took a step closer. But you're not broken. Are you bent, maybe? Scarred, but not broken. Sarah felt her breath catch. He was close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Close enough that she could smell the scent of him. Wood smoke and leather and something else. Something uniquely Cole. I'm held together with spit and determination, she admitted. Some days I'm not sure which will give out first. You're stronger than you think. His hand came up and Sarah thought he might touch her face. But at the last moment he seemed to think better of it. His hand fell back to his side. I come up here sometimes, he said, his voice rough. When I need to remember, when I need to talk to her. What do you talk about? The girls mostly, how they're growing. How Pearl has Catherine's gentle nature and Ruby has her stubbornness. A sad smile. I tell her about the ranch, about the cattle, about everything and nothing. Do you think she hears you? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe I'm just talking to ghosts. He looked at Sarah. Before she died, Catherine made me promise something. What? That I wouldn't turn to stone. That I would keep living. Really living, not just going through the motions. His jaw tightened. I broke that promise. For 3 years I've been a ghost walking around in a man's body. Just existing. Just surviving. Sarah understood that more than he could possibly know. What changed to you? The word hung in the air between them. Finding you in that barn, watching you fight to survive, seeing you get up every morning and choose to keep going, even when it would be easier to give up. He shook his head. You reminded me what it means to be alive. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must hear it. Cole, I know it's too soon. He cut her off gently. I know you've been here barely 2 weeks. I know you're my employee and I have no right to feel anything beyond simple human decency. But Sarah, I need you to know something. What? When I look at you, I don't see Catherine. I don't see a replacement or a substitute. I see you, Sarah Bennett, a woman who's survived things that would have broken most people. A woman who has more courage in her little finger than most men have in their whole bodies. His eyes were intense burning. And when I look at you, I feel something I thought I'd never feel again. What do you feel? The question came out barely above a whisper. Hope. The single word hit Sarah like a physical blow. Hope. Such a small word. Such a huge concept. Before she could respond, before she could even process what he had just said, a sound shattered the moment. Hoofbeats, fast and urgent. Cole's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerable man who had been opening his heart disappeared, replaced by the soldier. The fighter. His hand went to the revolver he always carried at his hip. Stay here, he ordered, already moving toward the stairs. But Sarah followed him down, her own survival instincts, screaming that something was wrong. They reached the front door just as someone started pounding on it. Hard. Desperate. Cole yanked it open, and Sheriff Tom Bradley stumbled inside, his face pale beneath his weathered tan. Cole! The sheriff gasped, bent over with his hands on his knees. We got trouble. Big trouble. What happened? It's about the woman, Sarah Bennett. Tom straightened his eyes, finding Sarah where she stood at the base of the stairs. Jacob Stone just filed a legal complaint against her. Says she owes him money. A long lot of money. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What, I've never even spoken to the man beyond that one time outside the church. Doesn't matter. Tom pulled a folded document from his coat. He's got a contract, signed and notarized. Says Sarah Bennett agreed to repay all travel expenses associated with her journey to Montana if the marriage to Thomas Bennett didn't happen. Total amount owed is $800. That's insane, Sarah's voice came out shrill. I never signed anything like that. Thomas Bennett sent me letters, but there was never any contract. Cole took the document from Tom, his face growing darker with every word he read. This is a forgery. Maybe so, but it's got her signature on it, or what looks like her signature. Tom's expression was grim. Stone's lawyer is Harold Whitmore. He's good, Cole, real good. And he's got a judge from Helena coming in to hear the case. If Sarah can't prove the signature is forged, she'll be liable for the debt. $800. Cole's voice was deadly quiet. That's more than most people in this territory make in 2 years. I know. And if she can't pay... Tom looked at Sarah and she saw pity in his eyes. Dedar's prison, or she works it off. Works it off, how? But Sarah already knew the answer. She could see it in the sheriff's expression. Stone owns the saloon. He's offering to forgive the debt if Sarah agrees to work there for 2 years. The room spun. Sarah gripped the banister to keep from falling. 2 years in a saloon? 2 years serving drinks to rough men? 2 years of hands grabbing at her voices, making crude suggestions, slowly losing every shred of dignity she had left. 2 years of being exactly what her uncle had tried to make her. A thing to be used. No. Cole's voice cut through the roaring in Sarah's ears. That's not happening. Cole, if the contract is legitimate, it's not. Cole thrust the paper back at Tom. Look at it. Really look at it. The ink is too fresh. The paper is new. This was made recently, not months ago, when Sarah would have supposedly signed it. Tom examined the document more closely, then cursed under his breath. You're right, but proving it in court is another matter. Whitmore will argue that the contract was copied from an original for filing purposes. Then we get an expert, someone who can prove the signature is forged. From where? Tom spread his hands helplessly. The nearest city with that kind of expert is hundreds of miles away. The hearing is in 7 days. Stone timed this perfectly. Sarah finally found her voice. Why is he doing this? I don't even know the man. What could he possibly gain? Cole and Tom exchanged a look that made Sarah's blood run cold. The ranch, Cole said quietly. Stone has wanted my land for years. The water rights alone are worth a fortune. He's made offers, all of which I've refused. So he's using me to get to you. It's leverage, Tom confirmed. He's betting that Cole will give up the ranch to save you from prison or the saloon. Cole's hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles went white. I'll kill him. You'll do no such thing. Tom stepped between Cole and the door. That's exactly what Stone wants. You kill him, you hang. Then your daughters are orphans and your ranch gets divided up among Stone's creditors, which conveniently includes Stone himself. So what do? Sarah heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. We fight. Cole turned to her, and the determination in his eyes was fierce enough to kindle hope in her chest. We fight dirty if we have to, but we don't give up. Tom hesitated, then said, there might be one option. I got a telegram last week from an old friend, Jim Caldwell. He's a federal marshal now based out of Washington. If anyone can help prove this is part of a larger criminal conspiracy, it's him. How long would it take him to get here? 4, maybe 5 days if he drops everything and rides hard. Send the telegram tonight. Cole's jaw was set. Tell him I'm calling in every favor he owes me. Tell him a woman's life depends on it. After Tom left, Cole and Sarah stood in the hallway, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on them like a physical thing. I'm sorry, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door. Stop. Cole crossed to her in 2 long strides and gripped her shoulders. Not hard, but firm enough that she had to look up at him. This is not your fault. You didn't ask for any of this. You're a victim, same as if Stone had put a gun to your head. But he's right, isn't he? You could make this all go away by giving him what he wants. You think I'd trade my land for a person's freedom? Cole's voice was soft, but there was anger underneath. Not at her, Sarah realized. At the situation. At Stone. At a world that allowed men like Stone to exist. Land is just dirt and grass, Sarah. It doesn't think, it doesn't feel, it doesn't matter. Your daughters will still have a father with honor. That matters more than any amount of property. His grip on her shoulders gentled. I'm not letting Stone win, and I'm not letting him have you. The possessiveness in that last statement should have frightened Sarah. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in her chest. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this for me? Cole's eyes searched her face. Do you really not know? Sarah shook her head, afraid to speak, afraid to hope. Because somewhere in the last 2 weeks you stopped being just my housekeeper. You stopped being just the woman I found in the barn. His voice dropped to a rough whisper. You became important. You became someone I can't imagine losing. Cole, I know it's too fast. I know it doesn't make sense. But Sarah, when you've been hollow for 3 years and something finally makes you feel whole again, you don't question it. You hold on to it with everything you have. Before Sarah could respond, before she could even process the confession he had just made, Ruby's sleepy voice drifted down from upstairs. Papa, what's all the noise? The moment shattered. Cole stepped back, releasing Sarah's shoulders. Nothing, sweetheart, just grown-up talk. Go back to bed. But the spell was broken. Cole retreated to his study, and Sarah made her way to her small room, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Jacob Stone, the forged contract, $800 she did not have and could never hope to earn. And underneath it all, Cole's words echoing in her head. You became someone I can't imagine losing. 3 days crawled past like wounded animals. Sarah tried to maintain normalcy for the girl's sake, but she could see the worry in their eyes. They were children, but they were not stupid. They knew something was wrong. Cole spent most of his time in his study poring over documents and writing letters. He sent riders to nearby towns seeking anyone who might serve as a handwriting expert. But Montana was still frontier territory. Experts were few and far between. On the 4th day, Cole saddled Thunder and rode into town. Sarah watched him go from the kitchen window, her stomach tight with dread. He returned just before dark, his expression carved from stone. Stone raised the stakes, he said without preamble. He's offering to drop all charges if I sell him the ranch for $10,000, half of what it's worth. And if you don't, the hearing goes forward, and he's found 3 witnesses willing to testify that they saw you sign the contract. That's impossible. They're lying, but in court it'll be your word against theirs. Cole slammed his fist down on the table, making Sarah jump. Damn it, I should have seen this coming. Should have known Stone wouldn't let things lie. And this is about more than the ranch, isn't it? Sarah said quietly. This is personal between you two. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. We served together in the war. Same regiment. I thought he was a friend back then. Thought he was a good man fighting for a cause he believed in. What happened? We were at Shiloh, first day of fighting. Our unit got separated from the main force, trapped in a peach orchard with Confederates on 3 sides. Cole's eyes went distant, seeing something Sarah could not. Stone ordered a retreat, would have left our wounded behind to be captured or killed. I countermanded the order, got our boys out wounded and all. He never forgave you for that. He got demoted for it, court-martialed for cowardice. Would have been discharged if the war hadn't needed every man it could get. Cole's jaw tightened. He's hated me ever since. This thing with you, it's just an excuse. He would have found another way to come at me eventually. Sarah felt sick. She was a pawn in a war that had started before she was even born. That night she lay awake again, her mind churning through possibilities. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be something she could do. The answer came to her in the darkest hours before dawn, and it was so obvious she wondered why she had not thought of it sooner. She would leave. If she was not here, Stone would have no leverage. He could not use her to get to Cole if she simply vanished. She could take what little money she had managed to save from her wages and catch the train east. Go somewhere far away where neither Stone, nor Thomas Bennett, nor anyone else from this nightmare could find her. It would break her heart to leave the twins, would shatter something inside her to walk away from Cole, but better a broken heart than watching him lose everything because of her. Sarah rose and dressed quietly. She packed her few belongings into the same battered carpet bag she had arrived with. She counted her money. $17. Enough for a train ticket, maybe. Enough to start over somewhere. Enough to survive. She was almost to the front door when a voice stopped her. Running away. Sarah spun to find Cole standing at the base of the stairs. He was fully dressed despite the hour as if he had never gone to bed. His expression was unreadable. "I'm leaving," Sarah said, lifting her chin. "It's the only way. If I'm not here, Stone can't use me against you. You think I'd let you go that easily? You don't have a choice. This is my decision." Cole crossed the room in 3 long strides. He took the carpet bag from her hand and set it aside. Then he gripped her arms the same way he had days before and forced her to look at him. "You're right," he said. "It is your decision. But before you make it, I need to tell you something. Cole, please don't make this harder. I love you." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and undeniable. Sarah's breath caught. "You can't. We've known each other barely 3 weeks." I fell for Catherine quickly, too. Some things don't need time to be certain. His eyes burned into hers. "I'm not saying this to trap you or obligate you. I'm saying it because if you're going to leave, you deserve to know the truth." "What truth?" "That you're not just my housekeeper. You are not just some woman I took pity on. You're the person who made me remember what it feels like to be alive, to want something beyond just getting through another day." His voice dropped to a rough whisper. "You're the person I want to wake up next to every morning for the rest of my life." Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. "I can't be that person. I'm broken Cole, damaged goods, a mail-order bride who wasn't even wanted." "You listen to me." Cole's grip tightened, not painfully but urgently. "You are the strongest person I've ever met. You survived things that would have killed most people. You kept fighting when you had every reason to quit. That's not broken. That's steel wrapped in human skin." "I'll ruin you," Sarah whispered. "Stone will take everything." "Then let him take it. Let him have the land, the cattle, all of it. As long as I have you and my daughters, I have everything that matters. Your daughters need a home, need security. They need a father who knows how to fight for what he loves. They need to see that some things are worth more than property." Cole tilted her chin up with gentle fingers. "They need a mother who will teach them never to run from a fight." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand against her skin. "I'm so afraid." "So am I, but I'm more afraid of losing you, of letting you walk out that door and spending the rest of my life wondering what if." He leaned his forehead against hers. "Stay, Sarah, please. Let me fight for you. Let me show you what it means to have someone on your side." She should say no, should protect him from the storm that was coming, should be strong enough to walk away. But she was so tired of being strong, so tired of facing everything alone. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Cole's arms came around her, pulling her tight against his chest. Sarah could hear his heart pounding, could feel the solid strength of him surrounding her. For the first time since her parents died, She felt truly safe. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the pre-dawn darkness. When Cole finally pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said. "What?" "I sent for Jim Caldwell a week ago the moment I sensed Stone was planning something. He should be here tomorrow, maybe the day after." Cole's expression was grim. "But even with his help, this is going to be a fight. Stone has money connections, a lawyer who knows every legal trick in the book. We might lose. Then we'll face it together." Cole smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Together," I like the sound of that. As the sun rose over the Montana horizon, painting the snow-covered land in shades of gold, and Rose Sarah Bennett made herself a promise. She would not run, she would not hide. Whatever came next, she would face it head on. Because for the first time in her life, she had something worth fighting for. She had Cole, and God help anyone who tried to take him away from her. Captain James Caldwell arrived after 6 days of hard travel, his horse foaming and exhausted. He was a lean man in his late 40s with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death to ever be truly peaceful again. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a memento from Gettysburg that he wore like a badge of honor. Cole met him at the door before he could even dismount, gripping his hand in the kind of shake that spoke of shared battlefields and blood oaths. "Jim, thank God you came. You said a woman's life was at stake. I would have crawled here on broken legs if I had to." Caldwell swung down from his horse, wincing slightly as his boots hit the ground. "Though I'll admit, my backside is questioning that decision right about now." Sarah watched from the doorway as the two men embraced, thumping each other on the back with the casual violence of old soldiers. She could see the relief in Cole's face, the easing of tension in his massive shoulders. "Come inside," Cole said. "We've got a lot to discuss and not much time." Over coffee and the biscuits Sarah had made that morning, they laid out the situation for Caldwell. The forged contract, Stone's ultimatum, the upcoming hearing. Caldwell listened without interrupting, his sharp eyes moving between Cole and Sarah, as if cataloging every detail. When they finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers under his chin. "Jacob Stone," he said thoughtfully. "That name's familiar. Took me a minute, but I remember now. He's wanted in Texas for murder. 7 counts all from his time running with the Dalton gang." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Murder. Yep, killed a family of homesteaders who refused to sell their land, burned their house with them inside it. Only got away because the local sheriff was on the gang's payroll." Caldwell's expression was grim. "There's been a warrant out for him for 3 years, but he's been smart enough to stay off the radar. Guess Montana seemed far enough from Texas to feel safe." Cole's hands had curled into fists on the table. "Why wasn't this information shared with law enforcement here?" "It was, should have been anyway. But paperwork gets lost, communications fail, and men like Stone have a way of buying silence." Caldwell pulled a folded telegram from his coat pocket. "I took the liberty of contacting the Texas Rangers before I left. They're very interested in our friend Mr. Stone's whereabouts. How long before they can get here? 3 days, maybe 4. "The hearing is in 2 days," Sarah said quietly. "If Stone gets what he wants before the Rangers arrive, it won't matter." Caldwell nodded. "Which is why we need to stall, and I've got an idea about that." He explained his plan, and with each word, Sarah felt hope kindle in her chest. It was risky. It required perfect timing, but it might just work. That night, Cole found Sarah sitting on the porch steps, staring up at the stars. The temperature had dropped below 0, but she seemed not to notice the cold. "You'll freeze out here," he said, draping his coat around her shoulders. "I needed air, needed to think." She looked up at him. "Jim Caldwell is a good man. The best. We fought together at Antietam. He saved my life twice in one day." Cole sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "If anyone can help us, it's Jim. And if his plan doesn't work, then we go to plan B, which is, I marry you." Sarah's head whipped around so fast her neck cracked. "What?" Cole's expression was dead serious. "Montana law says a wife can't be forced to testify against her husband. It also says that any debts incurred before marriage become the husband's responsibility. If you're my wife, Stone can't touch you. The debt becomes mine and I can fight it in court on my own terms." "Cole, that's insane. You can't marry me just to protect me from a legal technicality. Why not? Because marriage is supposed to be about love, not strategy. Who says it can't be both? Cole turned to face her fully. Sarah, I told you this morning that I love you. That wasn't a lie. It wasn't something I said to keep you from leaving. I meant every word. We've known each other 3 weeks, and yet here we are. Some truths don't need time to prove themselves. He took her hand, engulfing it in his much larger one. I'm not saying this has to be a real marriage right away. We can take our time, court properly, do it right. But legally on paper, you would be protected. Sarah stared at their joined hands. His was scarred and calloused, marked by years of hard work and harder fighting. Hers looked tiny and pale by comparison, almost childlike. What if I fail you, she whispered. What if I'm not strong enough to be what you need? You've already proven you're strong enough to survive the unsurvivable. Everything else is just details. Cole lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Besides, I'm not asking for perfection. I'm just asking for you. Before Sarah could respond, the front door burst open and Ruby came running out, Pearl right behind her. Papa! Papa! There are men coming! Lots of them! Cole was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the revolver at his hip. How many? 6, Pearl said, her voice trembling. On horses. They don't look friendly. Get inside, Cole ordered. Sarah, take the girls to the cellar. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Cole, what's happening? Stone's making his move early. He knows Caldwell's here. He's not going to wait for the hearing. Cole's face was carved from stone. Jim, we've got company. Caldwell appeared in the doorway, already armed with a rifle. How many? 6. I'll take the back. You got the front. Wait, Sarah grabbed Cole's arm. Don't do this. Just give him what he wants. The ranch isn't worth dying for. Cole tilted her chin up with gentle fingers. You're worth dying for. You and my daughters. Now get to the cellar. He kissed her hard and fast, then pushed her toward the door. Sarah gathered the terrified twins and herded them down to the cellar, her heart hammering against her ribs. The cellar was cold and dark, lit only by a single lamp. Ruby and Pearl huddled close to Sarah, their small bodies trembling. Is Papa going to be okay? Ruby whispered. Your father is the strongest, bravest man I know, Sarah said, hoping her voice did not betray her tear. He'll be fine. Above them, the sound of hoof beats grew louder, then voices rough and demanding. Cole Harrison, we know you're in there. Send out the woman, and this doesn't have to get ugly. Sarah recognized the voice. Luther Kane, Stone's enforcer, the man with the scar. Cole's response was calm and cold. You're on my property, Kane. Turn around and leave before this becomes a problem. Mr. Stone just wants what's owed to him. The woman signed a contract. She needs to honor it. The woman is under my protection. You want her, you'll have to go through me. There was a pause. Then Kane laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. We were hoping you'd say that. The first gunshot shattered the night like breaking glass. Sarah clapped her hands over the girls' ears, trying to shield them from the sound of violence erupting above their heads. More shots followed, a rapid staccato that seemed to go on forever. The gunfight lasted perhaps 5 minutes, though it felt like hours. Sarah counted each shot, her mind cataloging the different sounds. Cole's Colt had a distinctive bark. Caldwell's rifle cracked sharper. The attacker's weapons made a different sound entirely. Then gradually the shooting slowed, stopped. Silence fell, broken only by the ringing in Sarah's ears and the muffled sobs of the twins. Sarah counted her heartbeats, each one an eternity. 10, 20, 30. Finally, Cole's voice. Sarah, you can come up now. She took the stairs 2 at a time, the girls close behind her. The scene that greeted her looked like something from a nightmare. 2 men lay in the snow, unmoving. Dark blood stained the pristine white in spreading pools. Another man was on his knees, hands raised in surrender, while Caldwell held a rifle trained on his head. The remaining 3 were nowhere to be seen, apparently having fled when the fight turned against them. And Cole stood in the middle of it all, his shirt torn and bloody, but alive. Gloriously, impossibly alive. Sarah ran to him, not caring about propriety or the watching men. She threw her arms around him and felt his heart beating strong and steady against her cheek. You're hurt. she said, pulling back to examine the blood on his shirt. Not mine, most of it anyway. Cole glanced at his left arm where a bullet had creased the muscle. Just a scratch. A scratch that needs stitching, Caldwell said dryly. Sarah, think you can play doctor? Sarah nodded, already moving into efficiency mode. She had nursed her father through countless injuries from his work on the ships. She knew how to clean wounds, how to stitch skin, how to keep infection at bay. She worked on Cole's arm at the kitchen table while Caldwell tied up the surrendered man and sent Ruby to fetch Sheriff Bradley. The girls watched with wide eyes as Sarah cleaned the wound with whiskey and threaded a needle. This is going to hurt, she warned. I've had worse. Cole's jaw was tight, but he did not flinch as she began stitching. Those men outside, are they dead? 2 of them are, Caldwell confirmed. Luther Kane and his friend, self-defense clear as day. The sheriff will see that. And the others? Ran like rabbits. We'll find them. Sheriff Bradley arrived within the hour along with 2 deputies. He surveyed the scene with grim efficiency, taking statements from everyone. The surviving attacker sang like a canary once Bradley mentioned hanging, confirming that Stone had sent them to kidnap Sarah and kill anyone who got in the way. That's attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault, Bradley said, writing furiously in his notebook. More than enough to arrest Stone. He'll run, Cole said. The minute he hears his men failed, he'll disappear. Not if we move fast. Caldwell checked his pocket watch. It's just past midnight. If we ride now, we can have him in custody before dawn. Bradley hesitated. On what authority? I'm county sheriff. Stone has friends in the territorial government. He could have my badge for this. Then it's a good thing I'm a federal marshal. Caldwell pulled out his badge, the silver star catching the lamplight. This is a federal case now. Murder warrants from Texas, attempted kidnapping across state lines. Stone's dancing career is over. They left within the half hour, a posse of 10 men riding hard for town. Cole wanted to go. Sarah could see it in every tense line of his body, but Caldwell convinced him to stay. You're injured and you've got a family to protect. Let me handle Stone. So Cole stayed pacing the kitchen like a caged bear while Sarah cleaned up the blood and tried not to think about how close they had come to disaster. The girls had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by terror and adrenaline. Sarah covered them with blankets and returned to find Cole standing at the window staring out into the darkness. It's not over, he said without turning around. Even if they arrest Stone, the hearing still happens. The contract still exists. Jim said he had a plan for that. Plans fail, evidence gets lost, judges get bribed. Cole's reflection in the window glass looked haunted. I can't lose you, Sarah. I just found you. Sarah crossed to him, placing her hand on his back. She could feel the tension thrumming through him like a plucked string. Then marry me, she said quietly. Cole turned his eyes, searching her face. What? You said marriage would protect me legally. So let's do it. Tomorrow. Before the hearing. Sarah, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way. I'm not doing it because I have to. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I'm doing it because I want to. Because you were right. Some truths don't need time to prove themselves. You love me. The question was almost hesitant, as if he could not quite believe it. I think I started loving you the moment I woke up in your house and you offered me safety instead of judgment. I just wasn't ready to admit it to myself. She smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. I'm ready now. Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. When he finally released her enough to speak, his voice was rough with emotion. Marry me tomorrow. Marry me right now. Marry me whenever you want, as long as you promise to stay. I promise. He kissed her, then deep and thorough, and Sarah felt herself melting into it. This was nothing like the chaste kiss on the porch. This was claim and promise, and future all rolled into one. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I don't have a ring, he said. I don't need one. You deserve one. You deserve everything. I have everything. I have you and the girls and a home. That's more than I ever dreamed possible. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, until the first light of dawn began to paint the horizon. Caldwell and the posse returned just after sunrise, and the news they brought was better than Sarah had dared hope. Stone was in custody along with the 3 men who had fled the ranch. They had found him trying to destroy documents in his office, including several other forged contracts with other women's names. The evidence of his mail-order bride scheme was overwhelming. He's going to prison for a long time, Caldwell said, accepting the coffee Sarah poured for him. Texas wants him for murder. Montana wants him for fraud and attempted kidnapping. He'll be lucky if he sees daylight again before he's 80. And the hearing, Cole asked. Canceled. The judge took one look at the evidence and threw out Stone's complaint. You're in the clear, Sarah. Completely and totally clear. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. Cole caught her steadying her with his solid presence. There's more, Caldwell continued. We found records of 12 other women Stone and his associates defrauded, all with forged contracts, all threatened with prison or forced labor. We're tracking them down now, letting them know they're free. 12 women, Sarah whispered. 12 women who went through what I went through. But they survived, just like you. Caldwell's expression softened. You're stronger than you know, Sarah Bennett. Actually, Cole said, pulling Sarah closer, it's about to be Sarah Harrison. Caldwell's eyebrows rose. Is that so? We're getting married today if the Reverend will have us. A slow smile spread across Caldwell's face. Well, I'll be damned. Took you long enough, Harrison. The wedding was small and hastily arranged, but perfect in its simplicity. Reverend Matthews agreed to perform the ceremony that very afternoon in the same church where Sarah had first faced down the town's judgment. Sarah wore one of Catherine's dresses, altered to fit her smaller frame. It was cream-colored silk, simple but elegant. Ruby and Pearl served as flower girls, scattering rose petals from the hothouse Mrs. Patterson maintained. Cole wore his Sunday best, a black suit that made him look even more imposing than usual. But when Sarah walked down the aisle toward him, his face transformed with such joy that he looked almost boyish. The walk down the aisle felt both eternal and too brief. With each step, Sarah became more aware of the weight of what she was doing, not just marrying Cole to escape legal trouble, but choosing him, choosing this life, choosing to trust again after being so thoroughly betrayed. Cole's eyes never left her face as she approached, and in them she saw everything she needed to know. This was not a marriage of convenience for him. This was not strategy or protection. This was love. When she reached him, he held out his hand. Sarah took it, and the trembling in her fingers stilled the moment his warm, calloused palm closed around hers. I wasn't sure you'd come, he whispered too low for anyone else to hear. I wasn't sure either, she admitted. But then I realized something. What? Running away is what got me into this mess in the first place. Running from my uncle. Running to Thomas Bennett. Running from one bad situation to another. She squeezed his hand. I'm done running. I'm ready to stand and fight. We'll fight together, Cole promised. The ceremony began, and Sarah heard herself repeating words she had never thought she would say. Words that had meant nothing when she had planned to marry Thomas Bennett. Words that now carried the weight of genuine feeling. When Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness or fear, tears of coming home. The ceremony itself was brief. Traditional vows spoken with voices that shook slightly from emotion. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Sarah with such tenderness that several people in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. Ruby and Pearl cheered, running up to hug them both. Does this mean Miss Sarah is our mama now? Pearl asked, her voice hopeful. Cole looked at Sarah, the question in his eyes. She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Yes, Cole said, lifting both girls into his arms. This means you have a mama again. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with half the town showing up despite the short notice. Mrs. Patterson had somehow managed to prepare a feast, and there was music and dancing and laughter that went on well into the night. But eventually the guests departed, and the house grew quiet. Ruby and Pearl, exhausted from excitement, had been put to bed hours earlier. Sarah and Cole stood alone in the kitchen, the remains of the celebration scattered around them. Quite a day, Cole said, pulling Sarah into his arms. Quite a 3 weeks, Sarah replied, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heart beating steady and strong. I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream. If it is, I don't want to wake up. Cole tilted her chin up, his green eyes serious. Sarah Harrison, my wife. I like the sound of that. So do I. He kissed her slow and sweet, then swept her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" Sarah laughed, clinging to his neck. "Carrying my bride over the threshold. It's tradition. We're already inside. Then I'll carry you over the bedroom threshold." He did exactly that, kicking the door closed behind them. And in the privacy of their room with the Montana stars shining through the window, they began their marriage properly. Later, as Sarah lay in Cole's arms, both of them sated and sleepy, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Philadelphia to Montana. From mail-order bride to wife. From desperate and alone to loved and protected. "What are you thinking about?" Cole murmured, his hand stroking lazy circles on her back. "How lucky I am. How close I came to missing all this." "You're not lucky. You're strong. You survived. And that took courage." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "But I'm the lucky one. I was empty inside, Sarah. Just going through the motions. And then you came along and reminded me what it means to live. We saved each other." "Yeah, we did." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two broken people made whole. The years that followed were not always easy. There were hard winters and failed crops, sickness and setbacks. But through it all, Sarah and Cole faced everything together. The years carved their story into the land itself. James, their firstborn son, grew into a man who combined Cole's strength with Sarah's compassion. At 23, he managed the ranch with the kind of quiet competence that made Cole's chest swell with pride. The boy had his mother's eyes and his father's hands, and he used both well. Catherine, named for the woman Sarah had never met but deeply respected, became a teacher. At 20, she ran the one-room schoolhouse in Timber Ridge, teaching children from across the territory. She had her father's height and her mother's grace, and she wielded both like weapons against ignorance. Grace, the youngest at 17, was studying medicine in Boston, Sarah's old city. The irony was not lost on either parent. Their daughter had gone to the place Sarah had fled, seeking knowledge that would save lives in the frontier her mother had made home. The ranch itself had grown beyond Cole's wildest dreams. 2,000 head of cattle, 50 horses, land that stretched from the creek to the mountain ridge. Not because Cole was greedy, but because he was good at what he did. And because Sarah stood beside him every step, managing accounts and negotiations with a sharp mind that impressed even the bankers in Helena. They had survived droughts and floods, blizzards and prairie fires. They had buried friends and celebrated births. They had aged together, their bodies wearing down like well-used tools, but their love only deepening with time. Ruby and Pearl grew into beautiful young women, kind and strong. They never forgot the day they found Sarah in the snow and brought her home, and they told the story often to their own children in later years. Ruby had married a doctor from Helena and had 3 children. Pearl had married a teacher and had 2. Sarah had started a program to help other mail-order brides, offering them safe haven and legal assistance after Caldwell had helped free the other 12 women Stone had defrauded. She made sure that no woman would ever again face what she had faced. The program grew over the years, helping dozens of women find safety and new starts. 25 years after that winter day when Cole found her in the barn, Sarah sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. Cole settled into the chair beside her, moving a bit more slowly than he used to, but still solid as a mountain. His hair had gone completely gray, and there were deep lines around his eyes. But when he looked at Sarah, those eyes still held the same warmth, the same love. "What are you thinking about Mrs. Harrison?" he asked, taking her hand. "Just remembering the day we met, the day we married, all the days in between." "Any regrets?" Sarah thought about it, about the hardships and the struggles, about the children she had miscarried before James was born, about the endless work and the harsh winters and all the thousand small difficulties of frontier life. "Not a single one," she said. "You. Only that I didn't find you sooner." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon. From inside the house came the sound of their grandchildren playing, Ruby's twins visiting for the summer. "Cole," Sarah said softly. "Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on me, for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Cole lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles, the same way he had on their wedding day. "Sweetheart, you were always fighting. You just didn't know how strong you were." He pulled her close, tucking her under his arm. "But I saw it. From that first moment in the barn, I saw your strength." I love you, Sarah whispered. I love you too. Always have. Always will. As darkness fell over the ranch, Sarah thought about the girl she had been. Desperate, abandoned, certain she was going to die alone in the cold. That girl would never have believed that she would end up here, surrounded by family, loved beyond measure, safe and warm and home. But sometimes Sarah knew the most incredible journeys begin with the darkest moments. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. And sometimes when you're at your absolute lowest, when you're certain there's no hope left in the world, that's when salvation arrives. In her case, salvation had come in the form of a gruff cowboy with a heart as big as the Montana sky. A man who saw past her circumstances to the person underneath. A man who taught her that she was worth fighting for. Cole Harrison had saved her life that day in the barn, but in return she had saved his soul. And together they had built something that would last long after they were both gone. A legacy of love and courage, and the unwavering belief that no one is ever truly beyond redemption. As the stars began to appear overhead, Sarah leaned her head on Cole's shoulder and smiled. She was home. She was loved. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and that she thought was the greatest gift of all.